Welcome back to another video on my channel. I'm going to preface this by saying that this video is going to be mostly about a rant, all right? But it's also very useful advice for those of you that are actually watching my videos and following along with what I'm doing. So what I have on screen here is a comment that I received to one of my previous videos about the Monte Carlo simulation on Portfolio Visualizer. And this came in about a week and a half ago from Bart CV. And Bart is basically saying that the problem with these analyses is that they're only as good as the assumptions. And it never consider whether a company or a sector will fail. And specifically, he says it's using performance of an asset class or ticker from approximately 2012 to the present. And that if you just select Tesla and put in $1 million, he's not going to lose money over the next 20 years. That's what he said. All right. So let me respond to this, because on the comment itself, I responded pretty snarkily, as you saw. But there's a couple of things that he raised that's actually very valid and important points. First off, the analysis is only as good as the assumptions and the data that goes into it. That's absolutely true. He also said it doesn't take into account if a company or a sector will fail. That's not quite true, because if you're using a broad diversified mutual fund or ETF, even for an asset class like small cap values or large cap growth or total stock market, right? There's a mechanism in there that if a company doesn't match the criteria of the fund, it's no longer in the fund. It cleans itself. You know, J.L. Collins of A Simple Path to Wealth basically says that VTSAX, the Vanguard Total Stock Market Mutual Fund, is self-cleansing in that regard. So it does take into account if a company within an ETF or mutual fund fail. It gets removed. And over time, as you're looking at that performance, sometimes it will include that when they were successful and met the criteria for the fund, but over time, if they drop out, they drop out. But the fund continues, and the performance you see after that absolutely does take that into account. So Bart's wrong in that regard. The next point that he raised, he's completely wrong in, and I think he just doesn't understand Portfolio Visualizer and what it's doing. He says specifically that it uses performance of an asset class or ticker from only 2012 to the present. Well, he's wrong. That's clearly wrong. Depending on the asset class or the tickers that you pick, Portfolio Visualizer will have data back as far as they have it. And in some cases, all the way back to 1972. Now, if you were to pick something like a Facebook, they went public in 2012. You're not going to find data for Facebook before that time. The same with Tesla. I don't know when they came, public, but it wasn't that long ago. So of course you're not going to see, data for that particular ticker, longer than 10 years. Coinbase went public in 2020 maybe, something like that. You're not going to find ticker data for Coinbase older than 5 years. That's just the nature of it. But he's wrong that all of the data for Portfolio Visualizer only goes back to 2012 to the present. Absolutely wrong. And if you watch enough of my videos, you'll see that for certain asset classes, it goes back to the early 70s, right? The problematic ones are usually like REIT. REIT only goes back to the mid-90s within Portfolio Visualizer, and gold as an asset class goes back to like the late 70s or something like that, right? And then if you use a specific ticker for gold, like GLD, that only goes back to 2004, right? But again, that's not the fault of Portfolio Visualizer. It's using whatever data it has available. So that point is categorically false. Now, his last point is also very important. He's saying, well, if I look at Tesla and the valuation of it and the performance of it since IPO, it's going to be tremendous, right? And if I were just to build a portfolio using Tesla and others of its ilk and put $1 million in it, I'm going to have billions over, the next 20, 30 years or whatever. Well, I got news for Bart, because I actually don't think that's the case, right? We can get into the specifics of this, later. But Tesla is overvalued. I would never own Tesla. I don't think any sane person would own Tesla. Maybe a very tiny percentage as a speculation, right? The money that they're making for the valuation that the market's giving them, there's a huge disconnect. And if you want to buy into that hype, I'm not going to stop you. It's a free country. But you got to understand and use your brain. I mean, that's the point of my answer back to him, is that you got to use your brain. If you're going to use a good tool like Portfolio Visualizer, but provide garbage in, well, guess what? You're going to get garbage out. So, and I think that is a very important point in all of this, because Portfolio Visualizer is a great tool, one of the best available for free. I mean, it's, if I had this 20 years ago, I would have been happy as a clam, right? But at the same time, you got to realize, just like any tool, you can use it to your great advantage, or you can hurt yourself really badly. And that's my point on this, that I want to make a video out of this, is that you got to be careful. If you're doing a task in Portfolio Visualizer, even if you're using widely available, diversified, high-level asset classes, but you see that the results are only covering, 5 to 10 years, take it with a grain of salt. Don't be crazy about this stuff. Use the tool wisely and you'll do fine. All right. Thanks for listening to my rant. I'll see you on the next one. Later.